You are listening to the Better 2 podcast with M.Needom. Hi gang, Donna here. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Joe Lewis. Joe started his journey in Kalamazoo, Michigan. He was a football player in college, and he decided at a certain point that football just wasn't his thing anymore. He wanted to pursue music. He had taken music classes most of his life, and when he was in college, he really wasn't doing any music, and he really was missing it. So he decided to start producing his own tracks, his own beats. And that led him on a journey that ultimately took him to Brazil. And it's a pretty amazing journey. So stay tuned. Hi, Joe. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. Now, I'm talking to you from Brazil. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm currently in Rio de Janeiro.
Nice, nice. And is it everything that everybody dreams it is?
And more. The internet did not do Brazil justice when I was doing my research before I moved here. The culture here is amazing. The people are so nice and warm. The music is all the time. It's constant music, nonstop, no matter where you go. And the food is great. And the people are beautiful. So I love it here.
And have you been to Carnival?
So when I came here last year, I ended up coming right before Carnival, and then they canceled it. I was supposed to come back here in February, but then they got canceled because of COVID. So this year, or I'm sorry, next year, I'll be able to make it because I'll still be down here, and I'll actually be shooting a show, showcasing Carnival and all the things that go on around it. And they've missed Carnival so much because last year was the first year I think in history that they never had it. This year, they're going to do it for, I want to say 2 to 3 weeks versus just the normal week. So I think Brazil is pretty excited for Carnival as well.
It sounds like it. I'm from New Orleans, and we used to have Mardi Gras down there, which was Carnival,
Yes.
but it's a little bit different. I mean, if you went to the French Quarter, you had the risque stuff, but in Brazil, it's a little bit more open.
Yeah, it's a lot more open from what I'm being told. Everybody's like, all right, just make sure that you keep looking for things and just stay attentive because it kind of gets crazy. And they do it all day long for an entire week.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so I'm pretty excited to party with them.
I imagine so. So we're going to talk, though, well, even though you're in Brazil, and you have a lot to talk about because you have a show you're taping and everything. We'll get to that. But let's talk about, you grew up in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you decided that you needed a change of pace and went down to Georgia, correct?
Yes.
And why was that?
So I was in Kalamazoo. I grew up playing football. Both my parents are pastors, community leaders, and they were also both my high school assistant principals. So it was a lot sometimes.
You had to be the good boy, seriously.
Yeah, and it never really worked out that way. I was always in some kind of trouble. I talked a lot as a kid. So I was always in trouble for talking or talking to girls or, not doing my homework, very small things as a student. But because you're the principal's kid, it definitely escalates everything. But when I graduated high school, I went to play football at Western Michigan. And I was working as a behavior specialist, quote unquote. I wasn't actually certified to do my job, but I was working at an at-risk elementary school. So I found myself kind of following in the steps of my parents and working with the youth and kids, but it kind of burned me out. And I had always had a passion for music. Music was always my first love, but because in Kalamazoo, it's a very small town, we didn't have the outlets that kids may have in Atlanta or LA or New York, where you see somebody become an actual artist or producer. So after 2 years of playing football, well, after a year of playing football, I had a friend and he gave me the software that we used to make beats. And I fell in love. I didn't even know it was possible. I had no idea that producers got paid. I didn't know what a producer or engineer was. In a small town, when you see a music artist, you think that's really it. And that's kind of as far as you can think when it comes to entertainment. So once I got the software, started doing research, I think about my first semester going into my sophomore year at Western, I kind of stopped going to classes after the football season, was only making music. And I was like, my parents aren't going to like the fact that I just stopped going to class, especially just to make music all day long. Music that, of course, was not going anywhere at the time. So I decided to go to Full Sail University online. And even then, taking the classes online, it was still very slow paced. The artists that are from where I'm from, they have, very small town mentality. It's a small town. You can't expect everybody to think big or to think that the world is bigger than what they're seeing. But I had a friend, the same friend that gave me the software. He lived in Atlanta. He said, bro, just move down to Atlanta after I graduate. We'll work together. It's cheaper here than LA. And after my lease was up, I just packed my car. Me and my mom drove down to Atlanta, and that was really the beginning of everything for me. Kalamazoo just wasn't. I didn't have enough opportunities there, and I wasn't able to learn enough. I seen very fast that I was, only making music for 2 years at the time, but I was becoming known through the city as one of the better producers, and I wasn't good at all. So I was seeing how small of a market Kalamazoo was, and just the Midwest region in general. We're not very supportive up until now. This new generation of kids are very, very supportive of each other. A lot of collaboration, and they're learning through the internet that the world is really just at your fingertips. But I didn't have that, 6 years ago, so I had to leave and leave home and also become my own person. A lot of people weren't as receptive to me doing music because I spent, the past 11 years being a football player, working with kids, and just building up, who I was at the time. People weren't really accepting that I was going to start doing music, even within my family. So I had to leave and just become my own person.
Well, of course, and I was a musician. I told a white lie about the first bass guitar I ever bought because firstly, I'm a girl, as we know, and a girl playing bass in the 80s. While there was such a thing, and there's pretty famous bass players that are girls, telling your mom that you want to be a bass player, while she was okay with it, education was such a big deal. And so I told a fib and said that, I was hanging out with my friend who was a bass player, and he let me borrow one of his guitars that never made it back home. I still have it to this day, and I still play occasionally. But you try to, I don't want to say protect your parents, but you got to do what you want to do sometimes, and not rock the boat too bad.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I remember my parents. It had got to a point where every other conversation was, Joe, don't do everything in music. Stay working with the kids. Go back to school, get this degree. Just to be safe. I learned. I was very upset at my parents at first. For not being 100% with what I was doing, and I had to learn through one of my bosses that a parent's job is to protect you, not push you and make you take a bunch of risks that have worldly consequences. And the music industry is not an industry to play with. So I knew that my parents seen the dangers in what I could be around, and I had to learn that they were just trying to protect me and give me the safest option, in life, to where they know if I do this, I'll be okay. And it was a path that they had gone down, so they know for a fact if Joe does this at 21, he'll be good by 25, and he's perfect. In music, my parents, no one that I actually know personally, knew anything about the music industry except for my mentor. So it was a very unknown territory, for lack of better words. And I think that scared them a lot.
I mean, I talked to somebody recently that was on The Voice, and his mentor, Red's like, oh, well, I can get on The Voice, and if I win, I'm golden. His coach told him, you don't want to win.
I know, it's so bad if you
because you're locked into this whole little and nobody thinks of that. They just think, oh, well, I'm going to hit it big, and I'm going to. But the fact is, nothing. What we're presented in the media of the entertainment industry is not necessarily all that is there. It's not. I can sit here and say, oh, I was a disc jockey. Doesn't that sound really cool? That I was a disc jockey. I was an on-air personality at 2 radio stations. In fact, one in a big market, New Orleans.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the truth behind it. In Indiana, I was in the middle of a cornfield. And in New Orleans, I had to drive an hour outside of New Orleans down to
Ooh.
swampland.
Ooh.
And I'm in a booth by myself. So how glamorous is it really?
Exactly. Yeah. The untold truth of entertainment. It's not entertaining when you do it. You
No, I
know,
mean, if you're passionate about it, because I mean, I've done things like working on a TV show. If you're passionate about it, it doesn't feel like a job.
very true.
It may be shady sometimes. It may not be you may not be making a lot of money because that's the other thing. Oh, working in radio now. This is the '90s. It was like 1993. How much you think a DJ's making?
Ooh, honestly, I could not even guess. Not enough.
$5 an hour.
Ooh. I wouldn't have guessed that though. That's
No, I mean, I was a part-time jock, but still, $5 an hour.
yeah, that's not doing anything.
No. And I mean, granted, it's not as costly now. I mean, you can get a job now at McDonald's making $16 an hour. I made
Right.
$3.25 an hour when I worked there. But that's the difference in time.
Yeah.
But I understand where you're coming from. I mean, you had to follow your passion. If you didn't follow your passion, if football wasn't it, you have to at least try to follow your passion because if you don't,
Yeah.
you're always going to wonder what if.
Exactly. And that was one of those things that was just eating me up. I thought it was pretty goofy that, I'm 6 foot. At the time I was about 275 pounds and I was a big guy. And when I would, be done my homework, I had a mirror in my dorm room. I would sit and sing in front of the mirror and dance to Bruno Mars or Michael Jackson or whoever's music was on Spotify. And I would do little fake performances. And I thought to myself, Joe, this is ridiculous. You are too old and too big to be doing this like a child. Why don't you actually try to make a career or figure out how you can implement music into your life seriously? And it was actually, so I was always in band classes no matter what, and throughout school. And that gave me my little fix of music that I needed for the day. When I got to college, I didn't have any band classes and I felt very, very weird. I had no idea what had changed. And it took me to realize that I needed to do music, but I had always had band class to kind of mess around in, make my own music and kind of just hang out with my friends. And that was kind of my fix. So when I got to college, I realized I need to get back into making music, but not necessarily a band. I didn't know what form it would be in, but I knew that I miss music a lot.
So, what happened when you went down to Georgia?
Wow, my entire life changed. I looked like a deer with eyes in the headlights. Like it was very life changing. I went through, a lot of different struggles, all in the name of music. A lot of things that I did my parents didn't agree with. Sometimes you don't have money. Sometimes you can't pay rent. I've had my car repoed. Um, there were times I didn't have any food, and it was I feel like everybody has to pay their dues to get to wherever you're gonna go. And I knew that if I moved to Atlanta, I would be in the right spot, at least for a moment. And I began to, when I first got there, I started to work at a studio, and that was very eye-opening. I had never had industry interaction before, never seen anybody famous. And I remember the first famous person I met was Jill Scott. And I'm used to seeing Jill Scott in concert or on a movie screen. So, and I'm not sure why I thought this, but I assumed that Jill Scott was like 20 feet tall, like just bigger than life. And when she walked into the room, I'm like, "You're my mom's height. Like you're regular. This is cool." And I learned a lot about how I networked wrong. So I had been around Jill Scott, different artists from other major labels. I had worked with Maroon 5 at this point, and when I had to leave the studio because the studio got shut down, the owner got sick and decided to close it. And when I left the studio, I had no contacts to anybody.
Mm.
And that was probably my biggest life lesson is to do it yourself. I had a manager at the time, and I entrusted him because I have my own definition of what a manager does. And I'm young, I don't want to overstep toes. He's been here, done that. And when I would meet these people, I wouldn't take a picture with them because I didn't want to seem like a fan, and I didn't want to ask for their contact or their number because I thought that might be inappropriate, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
because I still wasn't thinking of myself as somebody in the music industry who contacts people in the music industry. I was looking at myself as, at the time, I was a maid, so I'm looking at myself as a maid who makes beats. And, I probably shouldn't ask Jill Scott for her number or her email. I thought that was very unprofessional. Little did I know that it was unprofessional of me not to ask or not to try to stay in contact. And it hurt my network a lot, once I left, because I had nothing. I had to start from scratch, which was good. I feel like you go through everything for a reason, but it was definitely life changing. Being on my own, not having any family down there, um, having to meet new people, learning that you have to build a persona of a sort, and it kind of it helped me see the difference in work and personal very clearly. So, whenever I was in Atlanta, I looked at that as work. No matter where I'm at in Atlanta, hey, I'm Joe Lewis. My family calls me JoJo. I never introduced myself as JoJo to anybody. I'm Joe Lewis. And it began to stick that, down here you work. But, because I was always down there so much, always working in and out of sessions, I had sessions running in and out of my house. It became very tiring to live like that with no, your family's not around, money is not what it always needs to be, because, in entertainment, you might go a month and you might not make any money. And then one day hits and you make $5,000 and you don't have to do any work, So it was, trying to find a balance and trying to understand how entertainment works, how to make it my own, and, just still becoming my own person, gaining my own viewpoints. How do I want to live? How do I want to think? And things like that. But it was life changing for sure.
I think that's one thing a lot of art people don't realize about whether it's sports or the entertainment industry. When somebody hits it big, and I had a discussion with another artist, Chelsea James, recently about the music industry, and we were talking about, so there's the actor who makes 20 mil for a picture. That seems like a lot, but then you got to look at who's all lined up to take their cut.
Yeah, and that was another thing I learned was um, everybody, the money isn't what the money seems, like you just said, somebody gets 20 million, they might only get 20% of that $20 million check. Yeah, so I learned that a $20 million check does not mean you get $20 million. There's this guy that gets 10%, another person who gets 20, your company's gonna get 50, and you might be left with honestly none by the time you get done paying your bills. So I also learned to stay independent as long as possible and not be somebody else's cash cow. If you're going to be a cash cow, be a cash cow for yourself. And a lot of times I've seen artists locked in very bad contracts. It was because they didn't understand it, they didn't read it, they just signed it, or they didn't have the proper lawyer, or they took the lawyer that the label suggested. So the lawyer, of course, said it was okay when it wasn't. So I learned the ropes of not selling yourself and really getting exactly what you deserve. If you bring in $20 million, you deserve to keep that $20 million and pay whoever did whatever for you accordingly. But you deserve the bulk of that work if you got paid like that, not to do all the work and then give over half the money away to somebody who just signs a paper.
I'm not sure if you're familiar, but you may be. NXS, there was a band back in the 90s and the 80s. Michael Hutchens was their lead singer, and they played Wembley Stadium. And they filmed there's a concert doc of it. And the alleged allegations, I don't know if this is true or not, they only got the band themselves, time they paid all the vendors, all the film people, everything. The band got $5,000 each member, and there were 6 members.
Wow.
And this is a venue that I believe sat 90,000 people.
Yeah, Wembley is huge.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
So, wow. But I mean, here's the thing. It's something, they joked about it that, yeah, that paid my champagne bill at the hotel. But but the fact of the matter is, it is there for posterity. It is a great show. They've remastered it. It's wonderful. But, that's something that you think, okay, well, here you are, you playing this big, huge venue, you're going to make bank. Not necessarily. Yeah. I mean, I look at Live Aid. I got to go to Live Aid, which was an awesome experience. I got to see so many people. But when you look at how much money did not go to the charity, and it's not that the performers were taking it, it was other things. But when you unpack all that, it's just like, think about so the artist that is also got travel expense, hotel, their food, then everybody else that they have to pay. So,
Exactly.
look at the bigger picture. It's like a book. Somebody will say, well, I don't want to pay $4 for a book, but I'm going to go pay $4 for a latte. Well, an editor is needed for a book, a cover artist is needed for a book, then there's ads and promotion. And that's not even counting, same thing with a musician, the time it takes to create.
Exactly.
So I get with the networking, and I get where it's a very diverse thing, because at one time, yeah, if you would have asked somebody for their contact information, you go away, little boy.
Yeah, and
Go
that's
away,
what I
little
was.
girl.
That's exactly what I was afraid of. I hate being rejected. My number one thing is being undeniable. So doing everything to where somebody they just can't say no. And when I see myself in those situations, why would Jill Scott give me her number? We hung out, had a good time, but what value can I bring to her? Why would Maroon 5 give me their contact? Why would honestly anybody give me, their numbers at this point? And that scared me. But, you know, I learned that shooters shoot. You miss every shot you don't take. So looking
Well,
back, I wish I took those shots, but
but here's something to think about too. I think it also comes with age and self-confidence. If you weren't confident enough in yourself and believed in yourself enough, putting yourself out there is a huge risk.
yeah,
And yeah, and rejection is not a sweet thing.
no, not at all. I
I
think
mean,
this industry is full of more rejection than it is approval.
yeah. And that's the bigger picture when you look at music and acting. I mean, nowadays, because of Spotify and stuff, you have a way to put your music out there. Same thing with writers. You have a way. It's not so, this is it. You got your shot. Nobody else is going to get it.
Yeah,
We're going to pick the select few. Now, hey, I listen to Spotify. This artist I've never heard of suddenly is on my playlist. It's like, okay,
yeah.
all right. Um, so you've gone through the troubles. What happens? So the studio closes. Were you staying with your aunt at that point, or just visiting with your aunt, or?
But I would see my aunt, she lived about an hour away. So I didn't see her nearly as much as I should. Honestly, that's one of my regrets of being in Atlanta is not visiting my aunt as much as I should. That hour drive in Atlanta, oh my goodness. She's an hour with distance. So sometimes it's 2 hours of traffic. And with all the things I had going on, and especially because my daily routine wasn't a routine. Somebody calls, hey, can you book a session in 30 minutes? So, it was very on the fly. And I was always afraid to miss something, tired. There's a bunch of excuses to not go visit her. But I would go see her every now and again. And when the studio closed, I ended up moving into my own apartment. And then I opened up a studio out of my second bedroom. And that was tough. I didn't know anybody, didn't know any artists. And so I was trying to book sessions, message people on Instagram, and I got lucky. One day I messaged an artist. He came over with his producer, and then his producer said, hey, how much would you charge if I just needed a room from my artist? I'll record them. I'll just pay you for the room. And that's actually how I began to build clientele and people start to know me, because Atlanta's very family oriented. They'll never bring anybody outside of their circle to anything. But once they know that somebody inside their circle approves you, you're golden. So the engineer, his name is Busy. Once Busy started to record in my spot, a lot more other artists began to come over there, record with me. And I began to build my name through that. So because I had no real connections to Atlanta, Busy was the only funnel I had. And he ended up paying a lot of my bills that I couldn't figure out how to get the money for myself, because people aren't responding to me. A lot of times I might have an artist, I message them on Instagram, oh no, I'm okay, I don't need to record. And then I think that same day they would come in like, Joe, you just messaged me. I thought I was recording with Busy. Yeah, Busy works out of here, you know? So I started to see how small
Yeah.
Atlanta actually is in this industry as well. But I did that for about 2 years. And then I left Atlanta last December.
So during COVID, which I mean, we're still during COVID. I mean, so then you went back home, correct?
Yeah. So COVID actually was a blessing in disguise for me as a creator. It allowed me to, because everything froze for a second. So I was able to not worry about getting money. I could worry about actually being creative, working with the artists that I liked, that I believed in. So it allowed me to make a lot of music with some of my artists. And it actually allowed me to game plan, the next years of my life, because I wasn't too worried about, trying to keep my lights on, or, I could save the money I was bringing in because I didn't have to really spend it. The world stopped for a second. And then I met a manager. He was horrible. I ended up moving in with them, under the assumption of, everybody likes to get you with this team building thing, oh, let's build, we'll build together, just come with me, I'll take care of you. And he told me the one thing I only want to hear: Joe, if you just make music, I will get it sold. And I'll do this. Just make the music and I'll do this. And I was so tired at the time, I couldn't even see all the red flags that I seen later. And I moved in with him for about maybe a month and a half. And I was like, okay, I'm working. He wanted me to make 10 beats a day. I think he might have thought that I was lying when I said I could do that. So I would just sit there and make beats. And, that's like a beat every 2 hours, out of a 24-hour day, which is kind of easy once you get into a groove. And I'm like, you're not working the way that I'm working. And if I'm not focused on business, I won't have any money at all, especially because I'm leaving it to somebody else. I was in situations where people would come to me, and out of respect for the process, I would give them to my manager. Hey, talk to him. And he would just blow it. I mean, nothing would come out of it. These are people who were wanting to work with me, and because of how he talked to people, it just went bad. So I decided to leave there. I went back home. Sorry, the internet here is so bad.
That's okay.
So I went back home in December, thinking I was going to be there for a couple of months, and because I had planned to come back to Brazil in February. I ended up not being able to come to Brazil because their COVID situation had got so bad. My parents were like, Joe, if you go, that's high risk, especially because of what's being shown in the media. I think as Americans, we don't realize how bad America really was in the COVID situation. So when we look at other countries that might be second or developing or third world countries, we think that because their country economically is less than ours, that their situation is worse than ours. But still to date, the US has the #1 COVID cases. So I think that the rest of the world should have been scared to come to the US, not leaving the US. So I stayed, got the vaccine, and then I ended up leaving in April to come to Brazil. And I've been here ever since.
So what are you doing in Brazil?
So I'm actually working on a streaming series where me and my mentor, his name is Nate Waller, we travel to different countries. We find a pop artist in that country. We make music with them. We showcase culture, food, people, what this country is about, any attractions they may have, and then the process of us making music. So we've been working on this we'll shoot the actual footage for the show in February next year, but we've been working on this since January of last year. So it'd be a full 2 years, since we've had our trial and errors and, trying to get things done. When we came down here last January, I was invited by some people to come perform. These are Brazilians. They lived in Atlanta. I did a song with them, and they were performing for a festival. And they said, "Hey, Joe, come down to Brazil this Friday through Sunday, and we want you to perform." I'm like, I'm not coming to Brazil for 3 days. I'll go for 2 weeks though. So I came here last January. I met the producer of the song, and I was by myself. And I just would walk around. I kind of look Brazilian, so I didn't stand out too much. I could afford to just walk around, blend in, as long as I didn't speak too much English. And I fell in love with it. The people were so nice. The culture is so much more relaxed than in America. Um, their priorities are, family and making sure that the next person is okay. So after that, and then of course I performed. I couldn't wait to come back. And my mentor, when I told him I was coming to Brazil, he said, "Okay, I'll come with you. Let's get some footage." We talked to an agent, and the agent I was talking to had 6 or 7 show ideas that he was working on. And I said, "Hey, if my team puts together a script or a treatment, can you put this in your pitch deck to pitch to whomever you're working with?" He said, "Sure." So I meet with my mentor, we write it out, we come to Brazil, and we absolutely bomb it. This was
Oh.
hands down the worst thing that I think we had ever done collectively, just because we didn't know.
Mhm.
On my end, I was used to doing everything myself, and I'm used to being the person behind the camera, producing, engineering, whatever the event has. I'm the person running it, not the person the event is about. When I came to Brazil, it was all about me. So it was very brand new for me to be the artist in the studio, very brand new for me to not be in control because there's a camera on me. So I have to, stay in character. And, we didn't micromanage, we didn't tell the camera guy what to do exactly. We didn't tell the people who were conducting interviews what to do exactly. So we ended up bombing it. We tried to put the best footage together that we could. And my agent was like, no, try again. You got the
Yeah.
right idea, but this is not good enough to pitch to a platform. So then we are going to come back down last May, but then of course COVID hit, so that never happened. But there were a lot of learning lessons in all of that. Staying true to how your process. I'm very hands on. I like to make sure that everybody is doing their job, and I didn't do that when I came to Brazil. So in reality, we ended up missing out on the opportunity to have the show put on Disney Plus right away. So this was at a time where COVID is about to hit, but at the same time all the new platforms are rising. Disney Plus, ABC Plus, whatever TV network you watch, their streaming platform is now developing, and they're all scurrying for content. Like they're just, if you have content, let's buy it right now. So we were in a position where if we just shot 15 minutes correctly, Disney would have took it. They would have given us the money to actually produce a full series around it, and it would have been very easy. But now, we're a year and a half later. It'll be 2 years next year, and it's not as much as an uphill battle because we've done our research, we have our contacts now, but it's not as surefire. Now we have to pitch to different platforms. Now we have to hire a full production team to actually shoot a full episode, and it has to look right. Whereas last year we only needed to look halfway right. So that's what I'm down here doing. On top of expanding my career as an artist, Brazil was the first place that they actually wanted to hear me sing. In America, everybody wants me to produce and engineer. And part of that is how I marketed myself and how I branded myself to who I was meeting, because I felt like everybody wants to be the artist. Everybody wants to sing and be the talent, be the actor, be the person on stage. And I felt like that wasn't an easy way in. The easiest way into entertainment is production on any side. If you can hold the camera, set up the microphone, if you can help the production of the show, you'll be inside the entertainment industry. So I kind of used that to my advantage. I got a little too good at it, where I was only producing, only engineering, and forgetting that I'm also an artist. So when I came down here, this was my first time only being an artist. These people here, they don't, up until just recently, they never asked for me to make a beat, to engineer a song, nothing. They only wanted me to sing, show
Nice.
up, perform, and leave. So I appreciated that dearly because uh, I wasn't received so warm as an artist in America because I might not have been, popular. I might not have been in headlines, had low social media numbers, and in America we don't care about talent. We care about numbers. So I didn't have what
Hmm.
we cared about in America, but in Brazil, they're so musician oriented that they don't even look at things like that, until you get to the labels. So I was just very appreciative that I had a place where I could be an artist, be comfortable, be myself, and be accepted without having to worry about, oh, will they like this song? Well, can I sing or should I be a producer? So I'm also down here, growing that because Brazil's a wide open market in music. There's so much English music that I hear, and people have no idea that their songs are playing in Brazil. When you look at Brazil's Spotify playlist, I want to say at least 50% is American and or English music, and their market is so big here that their big artists are fine. They don't have some of them want to become international, but they do just fine by keeping to Brazil, the same way that a lot of American artists do well by just keeping to America. So when I seen how wide open the market was, I wanted to jump on it, kind of be the first person to, or at least I think the first person from America to, really build a bridge between America and Brazil. Like here, they still listen to Lionel Richie on the radio. I think that's crazy because his music is like 30, 40 years old now. And,
Uh-huh.
just little things like that to where I've seen that, they're appreciative of who appreciates them. Even the TV show, Everybody Hates Chris, the mom from the show, I can't think of her name right now, but Everybody Hates Chris was the first TV show in Brazil that aired that showed a working class black family in a positive manner. So they loved it here. Brazil's population is like 90% black. So, because of the mom's character, they loved her. She came to Brazil 4 times, and her coming to Brazil looks like when Jackie Chan goes to China.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like just paparazzi everywhere. It's a very big deal. They treat her like Michael Jackson. And because she made these small appearances and, just said hi, then the show is now continuous because she came, showed a little bit of appreciation, and, was able to build a fan base. But I learned that if we can come to Brazil and, say that we appreciate them and what they're doing for us that we don't know about in terms of generating us numbers and being able to continue our content as Americans, they'll always listen to it. I'm sure that Lionel Richie came down here a bunch of times, which is why they still play all night long on the radio. So I wanted to get an early, advantage on that while still being a young artist to see what I can build for myself and being in Brazil.
And that's good. I mean, when you said Lionel Richie, all I can think of is dancing on a ceiling. Not even the video was bad, everything, I'm not going to go there anyway, because I'm sure I'll get some blast on that one. But have you thought about going to the National Association of Producers, National Association of Television Producers and Executives? It's called NAPTE. I did it when I was working on a TV show. We produced 6 episodes of a TV show, and it basically at this time, so this is like 1998, I think. So it's not, we didn't have as many platforms as we do now.
Mm-hmm.
Back then you had cable you were selling to. Now you have the internet you're selling to. So I'm sure it's even a bigger thing than it is now, now than it was then. But it's a way to network your ideas and your show to get it.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it costs to get in there, but it's an opportunity.
I actually never even knew about that. I'm still learning when it comes to all things TV and production. TV was not something I ever thought that I would ever do, honestly. So that's noted in my head.
And there's also a European version of it. I think it's MIPD or something like that. I don't remember, but I'm sure you can Google it, or I'll find it and send you the link. I do have a question. So you said your parents were pastors, right?
Yeah.
So how do they feel about you being in Brazil?
So I learned this trick, and I don't know if every kid can do this with their parents, or if it's just my personality. I learned this trick. I'm not sure if all kids can do this with their parents, and I'm not sure if it's my personality type. But I learned that um, I kind of just, if I do whatever I want to do, and I show that I'm not being negative in any sort or hurting myself, and I'm really doing it for a better cause, my parents really don't say too much. They give me their 2 cents and, hey, you should or you shouldn't do this. But somewhere down the line, they learn that Joe is going to do it. If he said he's going to do it, he's going to do it. And there's not too much persuasion. So they were a little on edge about the idea at first, especially because of COVID. But on top of, working on the TV show, I have a girlfriend down here who I love dearly. And I met her when I first came down here. And then we spent like a year and a half on the phone, just video calls. And I think between her and music, that they knew that there was nothing that they could say to um, kind of sway me from it. They wanted me to get the vaccine. I was definitely an anti-vaccine person in the beginning. So I think the fact that I was willing to get a vaccine and that I didn't want to get at the time, I think that showed them like, hey, he's going to do whatever he can to get there and to, make us happy about it. So I think that they love it. They want to come down here once they get done with the school year. But it was definitely an idea that had to grow on them. And And my mom cried when I left. She always cries though,
I
but
was
it was not normal for them.
I was just curious because Brazil does have that whole Carnival
Yeah.
reputation, so that's why it's like, well, you're the pastor's son, so
Yeah, I think that honestly, I think this just the way that I am, I've always been the more black sheep out of me and my siblings in terms of being a pastor's kids. I think we're all a little bit black sheep in our own ways, but my entire arm is tattooed. My hair is long. I'm in the music industry. Um, I like girls. I was girl crazy when I was younger. So I think that I had already built up a reputation of that's the pastor's kid.
yeah.
So I think they were kind of used to it. But I think also being in the music industry and letting my parents know that I'm aware of all the things that go on. I think that they're not even concerned anymore about the type of things that I could see or be around just because, the music industry.
Well, I mean, yeah, you either embrace the trappings of the music industry or you stand true to yourself. That's,
Yeah.
I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
I
Or
talked
you're not in it.
right. I mean, I've talked to other artists about, the big thing of coming off stage with that stage high. That's the hardest thing is when you leave stage, you still have that adrenaline rush. And depending on
Yeah.
how big of a gig it is, a bar, it's going to be there, but it's not going to be like playing, an arena.
Right.
So you have to navigate. And I guess really the honest answer here is you have to navigate and be true to yourself. Who are you
Yeah.
at your core and not fall for all the other hype?
Yeah. And that's honestly, I think that's the thing that has saved me a lot of times and has given me a lot of opportunity is that I always stay true to myself. I remember thinking, like, I'm a Christian. I'm more spiritual than I am religious. And I remember thinking, Joe, you're going to get yourself into, an industry that's not necessarily of my spirituality or my religion. And I always thought that I would have very small conversations when it came to my beliefs or other people's beliefs. And I think through staying true to myself, that I ended up having more conversations about God and religion and other people's religion than I ever had in my life with people in the music industry. And that was a thing where I was very wrong at, where I thought that I would have to keep my religion to myself, keep my spiritual views to myself, and not share them with the world. And then I started meeting people, and when somebody would say, "Hey, how did you do this?" I would say, "Bro, I don't know. God, like, there's no logical thing that I did. I don't know anybody. I'm not even sure how this happened aside from God's grace." And I would tell a lot of people that, and that was always the gateway of these conversations. But had I not said that, I wouldn't be being true to myself. I could have said, "Oh, I know somebody," or "I paid for it," or I could have said something very materialistic that probably wouldn't have allowed me to have the relationships with people that I have now. So, staying true to yourself is really the only advice that anybody should ever give to anybody, because I always believe that no one can tell anybody how to be them. A lot of people who are opinionated, like, a lot of people would tell me what to do. And when they stopped telling me how I should live my life, it was when I began to actually live my life how I see fit, and being a better version of me. A lot of times we get caught up with society, and we think of being a. I always tell people, don't try to be, don't choose better or worse. Choose yourself. If you are a person that would make that bad decision, then make it, because you have to be true to yourself. It looks bad on the outside to society, but if that's a choice that you would make it. Because if you don't make it, you're not being true to yourself. And I know that kind of comes across crazy because I don't want to condone people making bad decisions. But if I have to choose good or bad, I'm going to choose myself. I don't want to choose good, and then when I choose good, it's something that I'm actually uncomfortable with because it's not what I would do. And the same for choosing bad. I'm not going to choose bad if I'm uncomfortable with it. I'm going to choose whatever I would do. So I always tell people, stay true to yourself, make the choice you want to make, not the choice that society deems as good or bad, because it's not going to get you anywhere aside from other people's opinions that we all hate hearing, especially as creators. So definitely staying true to myself helped out a lot, and I'm
I
still learning how to be true to myself. It's a everyday thing.
Well, the thing is, we have to get to a point where our expectations matter, not the expectation of others. And
Exactly.
that's the hard thing. And you have to step back from perfectionism too. You know, you,
Yeah.
especially as a creator, we don't want to share. You know, people joke because it's like when you say, oh, well, this is my baby. They're like, it's not a baby. Oh, but it is, because I put my
Yeah.
heart, my soul, and my blood in it.
Yeah.
And
Very much.
when you put that out there and somebody just slams you, you're just kind of like, okay.
Yeah, it hurts.
Yeah, and they don't realize that it's personal. I mean, you try not to make it personal, but it's something you created.
Yeah. I always enjoyed the moments where um, I would play people my music in the studios, and because I was a producer, they think I'm just playing them whatever music, and it would actually be me singing. And they, oh, I love this. I'm like, this is good. I'm not gonna tell them it's me. They like it still. Oh, Joe, who is this? This person is horrible. Like, oh man, this is me, bro. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I definitely understand that. I think that as creators, I remember there's this clip of Beyonce, and I think she was at the end of her major record label contract, and she had to play the album for the entire board. And I thought it was crazy. Like, why does Beyonce have to play her music for the board? She's Beyonce. But that's just the process. And when she walked out the room, she goes, "Oh, I was nervous. I didn't want anybody to say anything bad. I'm a creator and I'm sensitive about my music." And I said, you know what? I totally understand. I don't want anybody else's opinion on my music, especially the people who weren't there creating it with me. It is one thing for, your fellow creators to give their input to help you make it better, but somebody who just, writes up reports or, pushes buttons, I don't care what you have to say about my music at all. So I definitely understand it being your baby, but I did learn that the business side is very crucial too. So you kind of need that other objective view to say, hey, this isn't good for business, even though it might be the most creative thing you've ever done. It's the best music you've ever made. This won't go on the radio. You need those devil's advocates to tell you, you know,
But I have to ask this: how much does radio play really matter nowadays? Because the radio stations are controlled a lot now by certain music companies,
yeah,
and when you have other venues such as YouTube and Spotify and Pandora, when you have those other venues, how much does radio really matter?
it honestly now I don't think it matters at all. What we're seeing where I remember, so Kendrick Lamar had a song probably about 4 years ago on his last album with Rihanna, and this was not a radio song at all. When I heard it on the actual radio, I was very confused. Didn't have the right tempo. The song arrangement was very creative, and I wondered, I was like, why is this? Who picked this song? And it's on every station. And then when I went to the streaming apps, it was the number one song on all of the platforms. So these platforms were changing the songs that the radio would normally pick out. And even just earlier today, I work for a marketing agency and we're scouting music talent. And I'm going through some of these TikTokers' music. Some of these TikTokers have like 5 million monthly listeners. And I'm like, they don't need the radio. They have
Mm-hmm.
5 million monthly listeners and they have however many on TikTok and Instagram. They don't need the radio or a record label deal or anything because they're already doing the numbers. So you hit it right on the head when you ask how much does radio matter. Honestly, I always wonder how much the systems in place matter. It's because we have things like the internet. But
I mean, when I look back at radio from years ago, I was talking to Chelsea about this, and it was the fact that, when I first started in radio, I lucked into it, and the guy who helped me get to be a jock, he's like, here's the sheet. I don't want to program the station anymore. Here's the sheet. You go through the cards. This is how we do it. You pick out the songs. And, all right, fine. The second station I worked at, it was all computerized. So if you're calling me to get a song on the air, I can't play it because everything's already pre-programmed. At
yeah,
the first station, if you would have called, I'm like, okay, I can do that. Although I was bad at one point, because somebody wanted to hear Whitney Houston Run to You, and if they had called me like every 5 minutes and it had already played and they were calling again. So I decided to play Bryan Adams' Run to You. All they asked was for Run to You. I'm sorry, I know that was wrong, but at a certain point, when you're calling every 5 minutes to play the same song, I can't do it. I mean, so yeah,
Right.
that was bad. I'm sorry. If you're listening out there, I apologize about being wise, but so you gotta have fun a little bit sometimes just a little bit.
Right.
So, where do you see yourself going? I mean, are you going to pursue your music hardcore, or is a TV thing more? I mean, what do you really want to do? What is your passion now?
Um,
Or are you going to be a mogul?
Honestly, yeah. So honestly, I'm leaning more towards the mogul. I think that's the only way that I can do everything that I want to do. I kind of ran from it for a long time. I didn't think that somebody could be creative and be in business and it work out until I began to study somebody like Jay-Z, or Babyface a lot more. These are people who were just as creative, making their own music, writing songs for others, producing for others, and dealing with the record label side. From a TV show aspect, this is all very new to me. It's weird. So I'm working on this show, but I'm also helping one of my artists that I manage through the agency I work for. He's getting his own show with Viacom. So I'm kind of going towards all things entertainment. But in terms of what I want people to know me for, I definitely want the rest of the world to know me for my music. I want my name to be synonymous with music, which is why I try so hard to be an artist, a producer, and an engineer. One of my goals is to have, 10 top 10 songs, whether I'm the artist, the producer, or the engineer. I want 10 songs to be released at the same time, and they're all top 10. And I can say that I've worked on every song that's top 10 right now. I'm sure that that's going to be one of the hardest things possible, but I think it is. So I'm saying that I want to reach more towards the mogul aspect only because if you don't understand business, especially in music, you're screwed. And I don't want to be screwed at all. It's happened before, did not like it on a small scale. So I know that I'm going to hate it on a much bigger scale. So it's definitely more towards the mogul aspect, just so I can have control over my career. I think that's a lot of things. That's something that bigger artists don't have right now is control over their own career. So I think if I'm a mogul and I'm actually operating um, the business, at least in terms of my career, I'll be in more control to keep myself safe from, a bad deal or losing a bunch of money.
Well, and see, that's the thing. As bad as that event in your life was, it taught you something, and that's the important thing here. Because without that, you would be blind. You'd be walking into this totally blind, and it wouldn't work. So it's better that you had that experience. One thing I want to add about go back to the Jill Scott thing. You know, the one thing we don't think about when we're meeting someone in the entertainment industry that's a celebrity that has maybe a hierarchy that has achieved certain goals. A lot of the times people don't look at them as a normal person, i.e. she's 20 feet tall. But the fact of the matter is when you actually get to sit down and talk to them and have a real conversation, a lot of the times you're not talking about music or what they do. You're talking to them as a person.
And that was so another learning lesson that I learned in that moment. My manager at the time, so Jill Scott comes in, he tells me, hey, Jill's here, she wants to hang out, clean the room up. So I've turned on Boys to Men, I'm cleaning the room up. Boys to Men had just released a barbershop quartet type album. And so I want to listen to it. And she runs in the room, who is singing? I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Jill Scott. Like, oh, it's Boys to Men. And so we're hanging out, just listening to music, having small conversations. And where it goes totally wrong is that my manager goes, Joe, put some beats on. I'm like, I don't know if that's a good idea. Like, she didn't come in here to record or to do anything like that. Like, no, put some beats on. So I tried to switch the mood to just playing instrumentals. And within 5 minutes, she had left. Not because the beats were bad, but, she had somebody in her face trying to give her ideas and do things like that when she just came in here to hang out, have a drink, listen to some music, and support the artist who's in the other studio room. So, I learned to let people be people. Everybody doesn't
Yeah.
always work, and sometimes when they show up to be a person, that's still them working. They don't always have to record or sing or do the thing we know them to do. But I definitely learned that you're not going to always be dealing with the person that you consumed, as a consumer. You're dealing with that person. I remember she was very nice. She shook my hand. And I should have ran with this. She said, "Oh, do I know you?" Because my name is very familiar. A lot of people don't realize that. I say, "Oh, I'm Joe Lewis." They think that I'm already famous, but it's
Mm-hmm.
because of boxer. But
Right.
the boxer is so far removed that no one ever realizes unless they're older, of course, that I'm named after the boxer. So she goes, "Do I know you? And I love your name." I'm like, "No, ma'am. If we've ever met, I'm sure that I would remember this. Like, I've never met you before." And we just, small conversations like that. I should have ran with that more, but I was very nervous. I didn't know what to say to her. You know, um, all I could think of was her in all the movies that I've seen, and I was still kind of stuck on the fact that she's like this tall. I was expecting this huge, grand person to walk in and kind of be bigger than life, literally. But letting people be people was definitely a lesson I learned there, because the moment we tried to force her to be an artist, she left.
Yeah.
I haven't seen her since, actually.
Uh, and but this is the thing, people don't realize. It's like, oh well, I can use this as an end. No, it's not an end. I
At
remember
all.
I hung out with a couple of members of Duran Duran after a show they did in Chicago, and we were all at the hotel bar, and I always thought Nick Rhodes, which I don't know that you know him, he's a keyboardist and he's very artsy, he's very creative, he's very artistic. And the man still wears full makeup. He's been wearing makeup since the 80s. I mean, I've always thought that he would be very highbrow and I wouldn't have anything in common with him.
Yeah.
So we're sitting there and no, we're not drinking hardcore. We're not, we're just hanging. And
Yeah.
somehow we just start talking about movies and books and things of that nature, and nothing about their show, nothing
Yeah.
about the music, just about life. And what did you think about this when this happened? Something that might have been in the news. And the thing is, I don't think people realize, especially when you're on the road, you don't have a lot of contact with people.
Yeah. It's all work.
Yeah. So,
I
I mean,
remember
go ahead.
I remember I had a friend, he's a videographer. He moved down to Atlanta from Kalamazoo, and he was just shredding it up. I mean, shooting every possible video. He had probably 20 celebrities in front of his camera in a matter of a week of him moving to Atlanta. And he came over one day, he said, "Joe, I'm just stuck." I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Bro, I've worked with Jermaine Dupri 7 times and he does not know who I am." I said, "What?"
How is
I
that
said,
possible?
"Do you talk to him?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "What do you talk about?" He said, "Oh, I asked him if he liked what I just shot, or I show him what's going on." I said, "Oh, bro, you're talking work." By this time I had learned that, even though in the beginning you think that entertainment, everybody is just as excited as you are, there's somebody who's been doing this for 20 years. It's their job. And when I worked a regular job, I remember hating talking about work at work. No one ever talks about work at work. So I learned that when you're in front of these people, be personal, have as much of a personal conversation as you can. I said, "Bro, you got to talk to them about the basketball game or something personal, but anything aside from work, because no one ever likes to work while they're at work." So if try to just be normal with him for a second, you're probably good as gold. To this day, he still works with Jermaine Dupri. Jermaine knows him by name now, but it's because he took the personal
Right.
side and had a personal conversation versus having that work conversation that everybody is always having 24/7.
I have a similar story, but it's kind of similar. Back to the Duran thing. I got to hang out with their bass player, John Taylor, and we were talking about music, but we weren't talking about music because I was telling him how I was pursuing acting and how I did play bass and that he did inspire me. This was an initial conversation. And he's telling me how I needed to play and sing. And I'm like, okay. And then we hung out again and we talked, but we didn't talk about music, didn't talk about the show. He was hanging out with me and my friend, and I think we talked to him for like an hour and a half. So fast forward like 2 years later, and he's doing a signing. He's gone solo, and he's doing a signing at Tower Records. Okay, fine. I have this really cool bass poster. that, I want to keep with my bass. So I'm standing in Tower Records and he's like way over there and I'm like over here with some friends, and I'm meet these other two girls and they're telling me how one of their friends has met him several times over and he doesn't never remembers her, never at all remembers her. And I'm like, well, I really doubt he's going to remember me. Now mind you, this is Tower Records, so and there's a line of people here.
Yeah.
So the two girls in front of me move up, and like I said, there's a good distance between the table and me. And he looks over at me and points. He goes, I know you. I've met you before. I remember just standing there being like, what? Thinking, how in the world could you remember me
Right.
out of all these people? So, yeah, I mean, I get that. And it was because I did not sit there and go, oh my gosh, so how's the new record coming out? I love it.
Right. Exactly.
Because
one thing I learned. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you just have to learn that they're real people. I mean, while they have, and that's what I've always said, while they have kick-ass jobs, it doesn't mean that that's their life. It would be like going to my old insurance job. I don't want to talk about insurance after I get out of there.
Right.
So go ahead.
So I was gonna say the same thing. It's all about the being personal. So I had two big opportunities, Maroon 5, and I worked with Hit Boy and Stacy Barthe. Both those opportunities came from me being personal, actually. These people had never heard my music before. When I worked with Maroon 5, it was a remix of a song that I got to do. And the entire studio building was working on songs from Maroon 5. And I can hear one of the producers, his name is J Rel. He's making this bomb beat. Like, wow, I can't wait to hear, they do a song over what he has going on. I come into the studio about 8 hours later and I hear Adam Levine's vocals. And I asked my manager, I said, did Maroon 5 come in here before? Like, how did I miss them? I left here at 4 in the morning and now I'm back in the afternoon. Where did Maroon 5 come in at to record that I missed? He started laughing. No, bro, they send the vocals in for the producer to make the beat around. I said, oh, that's great. Really excited for J-Rel because as a producer, if you have the vocals for an artist, the hard part is done. All you have to do is do your job. So my manager looked at me and said, give me 1 second. He walks out. He makes 2 phone calls. He calls J-Rel's manager. Man, he asks him if, I could have the same vocal stem that J-Rel had. And I had never really talked to J-Rel's manager. He was the owner of the building. Whenever he talked and, to a group, I listened. Whenever I walked past him, I said, what's up to him? Kept it very, small, but I always kept it, I never made it business. Hey, bro, can you do this for me? Can you do this? It was always, hey, how you doing? Are you good? Cool. And you're just always keeping things cordial and less about business. He said, I like Joe. He's pretty cool. Go ahead, give it to him. But I had never had a real conversation with this person. I just smiled at him when I seen him. The same thing. So the same thing happened with Hit Boy, where one of his artists ended up living underneath me. He knew I was a producer. I seen him outside one day. I was going to the gas station. I said, hey, bro, you like a rapper? Like, do you rap? Oh, yeah, bro, I rap. Got his number, and that was really it. And then we, always see each other in passing. And then one day he came up and he played me his music. He did that about 3 or 4 times. And I always noted that I never played any of my music for him. Normally people, they play you their music, they play your music, and that's really it. And I never really sold myself to him. I remember I was with him one day. We were hanging out in his apartment this time. He said, hey, you got your hard drive with you? And luckily, I had my hard drive in my bag. I said, yeah. He said, hey, I want you to mix this song for me. He said, yeah, Hit Boy made the beat. I'm like, you don't have a Hit Boy beat. How do you get a Hit Boy beat? I didn't, because he had never really, told me about his relationships or anything like that. But I hear the background vocals on the song and it's Stacy Barthe. And I have no idea who she is by name.
So you kind of faded when you were saying you didn't know who Stacy Barthe was.
Yeah, so he says, oh, Hit Boy produced it. Stacy Barthe, she did the background vocals. And I'm like, Stacy Barthe, I don't know her name. And he plays me the song and I know her voice. And I'm like, I've heard this voice so many times before. I said, okay, I'll take it. Like, even though I don't believe it's a Hit Boy song, I'll take it just because I know her voice. And the next day I found out it was actually a Hit Boy song. the beat tag that Hit Boy used on that song, Hit Boy never used beat tags before, which is why I didn't believe it was him, because I'm hearing a tag over a beat. Hit Boy never uses tags. The next day, Hit Boy released an album that had his tag all over it, the same tag that I had. So, that was God kind of giving me my confirmation that, I'm wrong and that this is a good opportunity. So, and I was trying to figure out, how do I get to work with one of my favorite producers and be the engineer for this song, as well as, Stacy Barthe. And because, if I do something right, I want to do it again and over again to be successful. I didn't do anything. I didn't sell myself to him. I didn't say anything differently. I didn't show my resume. I didn't play any music for him. I just said what's up to him every time I seen him. Hung out with him a couple of times and just, being personable. So I seen that I'm probably going to always gain bigger opportunities from somebody liking me as a person versus them liking me as a talent. There's talent everywhere. I think that if somebody really wanted somebody talented, they would go find the best person at it. But instead, we always use people who we like personally, who we like to work with. We enjoy their presence. A lot of times it's not about who's the most talented. It's about, do I like you? Would I sit down and have a cup of coffee with you? If I won't, I probably won't hire you. You probably won't do this job for me because, even though it's work, it's very personable. It's very personable, very intimate. So I learned that, smiling and just being nice and leaving the work to come whenever the work comes has always helped me out.
It's like doing these interviews. I mean, for me, it's, I can tell when we click, when I click with somebody, because you can feel the energy. It's a conversation. It's not something that's hard or tough. It's just something that flows. So I think that comes with anything. If you connect with somebody, it's going to make the job that much easier. I mean, when you think about office work, you can take it back to office work. And I'm sure you work a little bit in the office with the marketing. I mean, if there's somebody at your office you don't get along with, it's just like you're going, you keep going. So I guess we should be wrapping this up because we've been talking for a bit and I appreciate the time, but I want to ask you,
I've enjoyed this so much.
Was it better to have left Kalamazoo and head to Brazil?
Yes. If somebody gave me the option, I would do this a billion times again. I've seen that I'm able to see the world, and especially with entertainment, it's one of those things where if you do something halfway right and it's halfway successful, you have the ability to not only change your family's life, monetarily, but also give advice, meet new people, share the lessons that you've learned. So I would do it over and over and over again. Leaving Kalamazoo, leaving Atlanta, just leaving to go any new place. Honestly, I think I'll never regret that because I've always learned something about the world and about myself as well. I've always grown, in removing myself from an environment and going to another one. So I would do it over and over again.
If somebody wants to hear your music, is it on Spotify?
It's on Spotify, Apple Music, all the major streaming platforms, and YouTube as well.
Do you have any new releases coming out?
I do not have any new releases set for the rest of the year, but I will be releasing a project next year.
Well, when so you right now,
it's 9 songs out, but I'll be releasing a project next year.
Well, I'm going to say this now. When you release that project, if you want to come back and talk to me again, you are more than welcome.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. So thank you for coming and chatting with me. Thanks, guys, for tuning in to the Better 2 podcast. Your listenership is greatly appreciated. If you like what you hear, remember to hit subscribe. We also have our videos on YouTube. They're usually posted the same day as the podcast, and you should check it out. If you have a question or you would like to be a guest on the show, please drop me an email, and I'll be glad to talk to you about it. The email is Dauna, D-A-U-N-A, at thebetter2podcast.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and catch you next time.